Nobody warns you that becoming wealthy might be the loneliest thing you will ever do. Getting rich doesn't cost you people. It reveals which people were never really yours. There is a psychological moment, a specific turning point. That happens to almost every person who crosses a certain financial threshold. And by the end of this video, I am going to show you exactly what that moment is and why it shatters people who thought they finally had everything. But the reason it happens, that is not what you think. The loneliness isn't from losing people. It's from realizing you never had them. If you have ever achieved something significant and felt that strange, unexplainable emptiness underneath the success, stay until the final minute. This video was built for you. What you are about to discover is the hidden psychology the wealth industry never talks about. Why the people who get rich so often end up completely alone, and more importantly, what that loneliness is actually trying to tell you. Money reveals truth. This is the conversation that changes everything about how you pursue success. The invisible wall. There is a pattern that almost no one talks about. Person builds wealth, person achieves success, and then, slowly, invisibly, person loses everyone who mattered. Not because they changed, but because the light of wealth illuminated exactly who was really there. Harvard researchers studying high-achieving individuals over a 30-year period found something stunning. As income rose dramatically, reported loneliness rose in almost exact proportion. Not the loneliness of physical isolation, the loneliness of being surrounded by people, dinners, events, meetings, phone calls, and feeling completely unseen by every single one of them. Think about someone you know who got a major promotion, inherited money, or built a business from scratch. Did their circle change? Did relationships that once felt solid suddenly feel transactional? Did compliments start arriving with a slightly different tone? Slightly warmer, slightly more calculated. This is not coincidence. It is the invisible wall, a psychological phenomenon that money constructs around every person who accumulates it. As Warren Buffett once observed, quote, "Effect price is what you pay. Value is what you get." Quote effect, and the cruel irony of wealth is this. The higher your price tag becomes in society's eyes, the harder it becomes for anyone to actually value you as a person rather than a resource. The wall doesn't go up because the wealthy person becomes arrogant. It goes up because the dynamic of every relationship quietly shifts the moment money enters the equation, in a way that is nearly invisible to the person experiencing it. But why is it invisible? And what makes it so psychologically devastating? The loyalty test. Here is the uncomfortable truth that most people refuse to accept. Money is the greatest loyalty test ever invented, and most people fail it without ever knowing they are being tested. Before the money, your relationships had a natural equilibrium. Everyone was roughly in the same boat. The friendships felt real because they were built on shared struggle, shared experience, shared limitation. But the moment your financial reality changes dramatically, even before the people around you fully understand it, you begin unconsciously filtering everything through a new lens. Is this person here for me? Or are they here for what I represent? And here is where the psychology gets genuinely dark. Research by Dr. Paul Piff at UC Irvine showed that increased wealth consistently correlates with increased suspicion of others' motives, not because wealthy people are bad or cynical by nature, but because their lived experience begins to teach them, repeatedly, painfully, that relationships change when money is present. If this pattern is exposing something you have felt but never been able to name, hit like and subscribe to keep unpacking the psychology of wealth with me, because what we are about to uncover runs much deeper than most people ever realize. The loyalty test is not something the wealthy person administers consciously. It is administered by life itself, and the results are almost always devastating. But then comes the question nobody prepares them for. How do you grieve a loss that the world does not recognize as real? Grief you can't name. Stop and think about this for a second. What is worse? Losing someone you love, or discovering that the person you thought you loved was never quite who you believed them to be? Psychologists have a name for the second experience: disenfranchised grief. It is the grief you feel for a loss that the world does not recognize as real. Nobody holds a funeral for a friendship that was exposed as conditional. Nobody sends flowers when you realize that your closest relationships were built around a version of you that no longer exists, or a financial position you now exceed. But the grief is real, and it is one of the heaviest things a successful person can carry. Wealthy people, truly wealthy people, often describe a specific quiet moment, the moment they realized the people around them were responding to their success, not to them as a human being. The moment a friend's tone shifted after seeing the new house. The moment a sibling called more frequently after a business deal was publicized. The moment someone's eyes changed at a restaurant when they understood who was picking up the bill. As F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote in The Great Gatsby, quote effect, let me tell you about the very rich. They are different from you and me. Quote effect, what Fitzgerald captured was this: the wealthy develop a kind of emotional hypervigilance, a constant scanning for insincerity, that exhausts them from the inside and eventually isolates them completely. This grief rewires something fundamental, and what it rewires most severely is the ability to trust. The trust collapse. Now, what I am about to tell you sounds almost clinical, but it explains why so many wealthy people eventually stop forming genuine connections altogether. When a person repeatedly experiences relationships that shift after financial success, the brain begins to rewire itself. Neuroscientists describe this as threat detection escalation. The amygdala, the part of the brain that processes fear and social threat, becomes increasingly sensitive to relational cues. The result is not occasional suspicion. The result is baseline distrust. Distrust, a constant, low-level assumption that most people approaching them have an ulterior motive. And once this wiring sets in, it does not just affect new relationships. It reaches backward in time and contaminates the old ones too. Trust becomes the enemy. The wealthy person begins to reinterpret their entire relational history. Moments that felt pure in the past now seem calculated in retrospect. The childhood friend who always seemed to need something. The colleague who was charming right up until they got the promotion instead. The partner who was endlessly supportive until the money showed up. And then, perhaps, too supportive in very specific ways. This retroactive suspicion is psychologically devastating. It does not just affect the future, it erodes the past. And without a trustworthy past, a person loses their sense of having ever been truly known by anyone. When you can't trust anyone's motives, you eventually stop letting anyone close enough to try. That is where the real isolation takes root. But what fills the space when authentic connection becomes too dangerous? Keep watching. The next mechanism is darker than you expect. The status trap. Here is where the story takes a dark turn. Because once authentic connection becomes too dangerous, the wealthy person does not simply go without connection. They replace it. They replace depth with status, real relationships with networks, vulnerability with transactions. What looks like connection is actually frozen. What looks like friendship is actually strategic positioning. This is the status trap. The psychological mechanism where social identity fills the void that genuine relationships left behind. Research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that high-status individuals consistently overestimate the quality of their social relationships, precisely because they confuse frequency of contact with depth of connection. Think about the successful executive surrounded by people at every single event, the entrepreneur who knows everyone in every room, the influencer with millions of followers who cries alone on a Sunday afternoon with no one to call. Success surrounds and isolates. The trap is self-reinforcing. The more a person invests in status relationships, the less capacity they have for real ones, because real relationships require time, vulnerability, and reciprocity that status relationships never demand. Status relationships are efficient, always available, always flattering, never true. As Aristotle observed about the nature of genuine friendship, quote effect, a friend to all is a friend to none. Quote effect, and nowhere is this ancient truth more visible than in the world of significant wealth. But the status trap is just the surface. Beneath it lies something even more psychologically crippling, and it has to do with who you inevitably become when you change at that level. The identity shift. Let me pause here because this next part changes the entire picture. Because everything we have discussed so far has been about what other people do to the wealthy person. But what about what the wealthy person does to themselves? Building real, significant wealth does not just change your bank account. It changes your identity at a fundamental level. Your values shift. Your time horizon extends years further into the future. Your tolerance for certain conversations. Complaints, petty drama, zero-sum thinking drops to nearly zero. The things that once satisfied you, the Friday night rituals, the shared grievances about work, the comfortable stagnation of familiar routines, no longer feed anything real inside you. And the people from your past are still living in the version of you that existed before the change. Psychologist Dan McAdams, who spent decades studying personal narrative and identity development, found that major life transitions, including significant financial leaps, create what he called narrative ruptures. Moments where the story you were telling about yourself no longer connects to the story you are actually living. This rupture is deeply disorienting because the wealthy person did not consciously choose to outgrow their relationships. It simply happened. Quietly, incrementally, without anyone declaring it. And there is a specific guilt attached to this. The guilt of wanting more, of having changed, of no longer fitting inside spaces that once felt like home. You didn't leave them behind. You became someone they could no longer reach. And the outside world sees none of this internal experience. It just sees someone who appears to have everything. That gap between what people perceive and what is actually happening inside. That is exactly where the next layer lies. The yes man cage. Now forget everything I said about the wealthy person being a passive victim in this process. Because there is an active choice most wealthy people make that deepens their loneliness. And they almost never recognize it for what it is until it has already cost them everything. They choose comfort over truth. They choose agreement over honest challenge. Consciously or unconsciously, they build around themselves a circle of yes men. People whose primary function is to reflect back exactly what the wealthy person wants to see and hear about themselves. Yes men build gilded cages. This is not a character flaw. It is a predictable psychological response. When every genuine relationship feels risky, when trust has collapsed and status has replaced depth. The path of least resistance is to surround yourself with people who will never challenge you, never disagree, never make you feel like you are getting something profoundly wrong. But here is the devastating consequence. Research from Columbia Business School showed that leaders surrounded by sycophants consistently make worse decisions, experience higher rates of depression, and report significantly lower life satisfaction than those who maintain honest advisors. Even when the sycophants create a more pleasant daily environment. Yes men make you feel less lonely on the surface, while making you more lonely underneath. Because what a human being actually needs is not agreement, it is recognition, the felt experience of being seen, clearly, truthfully, without agenda, and still chosen. In the yes men cage, that experience is impossible, and the longer you live inside it, the more you forget what real recognition ever felt like. What comes next is the darkest layer, and it explains exactly why this specific loneliness cuts so unbearably deep. The mirror shatters. Here is what nobody tells you about the loneliness that comes with significant wealth. It is not simply loneliness. It is a specific, compound grief that combines loss, disillusionment, and a complete reordering of how you understand human nature itself. Wealth doesn't make you lonely. It makes you see the loneliness that was always there. Think about what it genuinely means to discover, to truly see for the first time. That the people you trusted, the people you built memories with, the people you loved, were responding at least partly to your circumstances rather than to you as a person. That the warmth you received was, in some proportion, a warmth of proximity to resources, to status, to the opportunity you represented. This realization is what psychologists call an epistemic shock, a moment when your fundamental beliefs about reality are exposed as incomplete or incorrect, and unlike other shocks, loss, failure, public rejection, this one arrives without comfort, because the very people who would normally comfort you are the ones whose motives are now precisely in question. The loneliest moment is not being alone. It is being surrounded and realizing that no one truly knows you. As Viktor Frankl wrote after surviving the unimaginable, quote, effect, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Quote, effect, the wealthy face a different version of this test. They cannot easily be robbed of material things, but they can, and often are, robbed of the illusion that kept them connected. When the mirror shatters, you see clearly. But that clarity at that cost carries its own unbearable weight. And the next revelation, this might be the most important thing you hear in this entire video. The core revelation. This is the moment we have been building toward from the very first second of this video. The open loop I created at the beginning. The specific psychological turning point that happens to almost every person who crosses a certain financial threshold. This is it. Revelation. The turning point is not when the money arrives. It is when the person realizes, with total and undeniable clarity, that the loneliness was never created by the wealth. The wealth simply removed the noise that had always been covering the loneliness that was already there. Before the money, life is loud. There is urgency, shared struggle, the constant momentum of just getting by. In that noise, it is nearly impossible to hear the deeper question: do these people actually know me? Do they love me? Not the role I play, not the need I fill, not the security I provide, but me. Wealth quiets that noise, and in that silence, the answer becomes unavoidable. Money didn't change your friends, it revealed them, and it revealed you to yourself. This is the hidden psychology that drives everything we have discussed today. The loneliness that comes with wealth is not a side effect of success. It is the experience of finally seeing your relationships clearly, perhaps for the very first time. And that revelation is a grief that no amount of money can fix, because it is not a financial problem. It is a human one. Wealth reveals always true. If this hit something real inside you, if you recognize this pattern in your own life or in someone you love, send this to as many people as you possibly can. This truth needs to reach far beyond this screen. And comment one word that describes what this feels like: seen, broken, or awake. Whichever one is sitting in your chest right now, because what you do next with this revelation, that is everything. The way forward. Here is what the psychology actually tells us to do with a revelation this uncomfortable. Because understanding the problem, as painful as that understanding is not the same as knowing how to live inside it with dignity and intention. The first truth is this: not every relationship that changes after wealth arrives is a betrayal. Some people genuinely do not know how to relate to someone who has changed dramatically at a fundamental level. Some relationships were built for a specific season of life and honestly belong to that season. The real work is discernment, learning to tell the difference between someone who loved you conditionally and someone who simply does not know how to reach the person you have become. 1. Build real relationships before the wealth arrives. 2. Seek people who challenge rather than only comfort you. 3. Create deliberate space for honest feedback in your inner circle. The second truth is more confronting. If you want genuine connection after achieving significant wealth, you have to be willing to be known beyond your success. You have to let people see the doubt, the fear, the moments of feeling like an imposter in your own life. Wealth without vulnerability is a fortress, and fortresses are prisons for the people who build them. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private meditations, quote, "Affect you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Quote, "Affect the people who built real wealth and preserved their humanity did not prevent money from revealing their relationships. They used that revelation to build better ones. Consciously, deliberately, with complete honesty about what they actually needed from another human being." Real connection requires radical courage. The loneliness of wealth is not a life sentence. It is a diagnostic, and now that you understand what it is diagnosing, you can finally begin to heal it. The hidden psychology behind people who get rich and become lonely comes down to one single truth: money is the ultimate revealer. It does not create your relationships, it exposes them. It does not create loneliness. It removes the distractions that were covering the loneliness that was already there, waiting to be seen. People who get rich and become lonely aren't being punished by success. They are finally being shown the truth. And what you choose to do with that truth defines everything that comes after. You can retreat into the fortress of wealth, surrounding yourself with yes men, status relationships, and carefully maintained illusions. Or you can use the clarity that money gave you to build something rarer and more genuinely valuable than any amount in any bank account: real, honest, freely chosen human connection. Real connection is true wealth. The grief that comes from realizing your relationships were never exactly what you believed them to be. That grief is not a failure. It is the beginning of authenticity. It is the moment you stop performing for an audience and start living completely for yourself. If you made it this far, comment revealed. Because wealth just showed you something that most people spend their entire lives refusing to see. Your mind is either programmed for wealth or poverty. Now you know how to reprogram it. If this exposed something real in you, subscribe. There is more to uncover.